welcome to another episode of the Big Show podcast. I'm joined today by Jacob Van Olst and Jannette. What was it? Janet. It's Janet. Yeah.
You can say it, Jannette. My geometry
yeah.
teacher used to say it that way.
Yeah, I'll probably go the other way. Yeah. Either way, it's Jannette. And hello guys. Hi.
What up?
Yeah. Awesome. So we're talking about Princess Mononoke today. And maybe we'll delve into a whole lot of stuff there, but we'll start from the beginning, at the very beginning. So what did you guys like about the movie? And all of us saw it. I saw it recently, to be honest. I hadn't watched the thing. It was the first time watching it, and
It was both your first times watching it, right?
Yeah,
that is correct.
It was
yes.
mine.
Yeah. So this was my third time watching it. I haven't watched it that much, but I rewatched it when you guys were, because I was like, well, I'll just refresh my memory.
Yeah, because we'd be fresh with the thing watching right now, and you might not be. Yeah, true. And it certainly was not what I expected.
What did you expect? Now I'm curious.
Yeah, because the title Princess Mononoke. Now I thought it would be a movie about a princess and a guy who comes in, and maybe in the Snow White kind of setup, the guy comes in, sort of rescues her kind of deal, and he hops off with her or something like that, something similar to that. I did not expect a bloodstained princess, a boar god, and a guy with demons inside of his body running through. That is not what I had in mind, but yeah, it was fascinating though, nonetheless. And yeah. What do you make of it, Jacob?
I think I liked it more than Nazca, The Valley of the Winds.
Right. So if you're gonna do comparisons, I'd really like to check that out as well. But yeah, go on. I haven't seen that. But
Sorry, that's The Valley of the Wind. I should probably say it's the full title. But yeah, it definitely intrigued me that there was more to it than just the environmental philosophy. There was more variables.
Yeah.
Because
you want to sketch those out of it?
Because in Nazca, The Valley of the Wind, you basically have the environment, you anger the environment gets angry back, basically.
Yeah.
And then I won't spoil it because you haven't watched it yet.
Yeah,
I think you should.
Yeah.
But Princess Mononoke has this boar that is a god of the forest, that is god of a forest among other gods of the forest, or kami, right?
Yeah.
Kami boars.
Yeah.
They're like a pack. And he becomes a negative oni. Becomes an oni, right? Or a demon. Or is it an oni? Or is it?
Did you watch the Japanese or?
I watched it in Japanese, but I'm not terribly familiar with the language as I ought to be, considering the fact that I only pretty much watch it in everything.
I should admit that I watched it in dub all 3 times because it's just classic that way. And I have I own it, but not in Japanese. And every time I watched it with English speaking people that aren't interested in Japanese. Okay.
I tried the dub, I couldn't get into it. So I went into the sub again.
Yeah, I've heard the dubs are good, but
and I'm a huge dub fan, but I couldn't get in the dub for some reason.
You watched it in dub?
For me?
Yeah.
No, I didn't. I tried to initially, but Ashtaka's voice didn't. So I thought, nah, I'll just watch the sub again, and I watched the sub, and I liked it. But no, I couldn't.
I like Ashtaka's dub. I'll admit. I don't understand why. What's her name? Boshi. I don't understand why she's the only one with an accent, but I mean it suited her. But I was just like, why not give all of them accents, or everyone that's from where she is? Because she's the only one. It didn't make any sense to me. But that's how it is with English dubs. They just give people accents who they want to give
Random
accents.
accents because they want? Yeah, yeah. I guess
Yeah.
the older ones would have that. Yeah, yeah. So here's the thing I wanted to ask. I don't know if we should delve into it right now, but as far as I understood that there was this thing called a Tatari, or a curse that seem to be on the
Yeah.
on the boar god, right? So the boar god is something like a well, yeah, I guess a kami in some sense, and
Mm.
is now possessed by uh, or is possessed the right word? I don't know. There's a Tatari or a curse
Not
that
really possessed. I would say it's more like corrupted.
Yeah,
so
that
his
was the way
desires corrupt
Miyazaki
him.
structured that, right? Was kind of like the Chinese black magic.
Oh, go on.
Yeah,
No, wait, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was watching a video on it because I wanted to prepare for the video for the podcast, right?
Cool.
Which I'm still kind of disappointed in myself for not writing 7 to 10 pages of notes. For shame, me, for shame. Uh, and he was on these Chinese magicians would conjure, would basically boil all these poisonous animals and insects,
Oh
and
yeah,
then
yeah, yeah. That's the Tatari, right? I think that's the thing, or something
yeah,
similar to
and
that.
it would come out as something like a black worm or a snake,
Oh
and you
yeah,
steal all the
the
black
wriggly thing
worms.
that holds on to his hand.
Yeah, the snake get kind of seen later.
Yeah,
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 it's very interesting. I found that
yeah,
fascinating.
yeah, yeah.
It's another way I think how connected Japan and China are too in their mythologies and legends. Mm.
Yeah, yeah. And there was something else too that connected them, right? The wolf, which became kind of like a two-tailed fox kind of a thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's reminiscent. That's somehow connected to Chinese mythology, is it?
I
Because
don't know. I
I
think it's kind
remember
of
reading
both.
somewhere.
I'm not sure where the kitsune started because bringing up Sonic
So
again.
basically every culture has their own version of kitsune or
Yeah.
fox spirits and all that kind of stuff. Even Native American
Mm.
mythology. And it's different, but usually in the Eastern mythologies, the legend behind the kitsune is generally the same, where it's usually a shapeshifter, multiple tails.
Yeah.
But in the end, it just really depends on who's telling the story.
Yeah,
I've often
yeah.
heard it in the same breath as the Tanuki, which is kind of funny to me. If you
But
know
I mean,
anything about the Tanuki.
in Princess Mononoke, though, they aren't kitsune. There's no foxes in
No.
Princess Mononoke. They're
No,
okami,
yeah,
or
yeah,
wolf.
Yeah.
yeah.
And okami have a different, like, they have a different symbolism or slash reverie within Japanese culture than Chinese culture necessarily. Like, kind of the same thing as foxes, where it's marginally different, but also generally the same.
Yeah,
Fascinating.
yeah. Are they considered messengers or something? Because messengers of the gods or something similar to that. Because I seem to have read that they are the messengers of the gods. These wolves,
Yeah, wolves and deer.
wolves and deer, right? Yeah, yeah.
I can see the deer being
Huh.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. So here's the thing. We've got a princess and well we've got a princess and we've got Ashtaka and we've got Lady Eboshi. Do we have any negative characters here? Is there a person that we can call a villain here, or is that not the case? Because I don't seem to well doesn't seem to me to be the case that there is a quote unquote villain or a hero. It's all meshed, if you will. Right. So yeah, I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts on that, on on the hero villain distinction in Princess Mononoke, and maybe in Miyazaki's work in general. Is that because it doesn't seem to me that he
Mm-hmm.
draws the distinction there clearly.
I don't know if Jacob wants to talk first or not.
You go ahead.
Maybe
I
you
think
guys
you're
can start.
most familiar with Shintoism and It's kind of
Okay.
stuff in
So
the
the interesting thing with Miyazaki's work in general is that usually he doesn't have a like specific villain, doesn't have a specific antagonist. Or even if he does, then even those antagonists have depth or they have their own motivations. Like even some would say that the real villain is Jiko. I think that's his name.
Yeah, the
Jikobo.
guy.
the red
Yeah,
The
nose
guy
dude,
the
who
guy on the
shortened his
really
head.
long
the red nose
what are they
guy.
called? The Japanese sandals.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
always forget what they're called. But he has done a lot of questionable things, but at the end of the day, you realize that he still has his own mindset and his own goals. And at the end, he's still willing to relinquish those when there's no other choice.
Yeah.
But still, like every character has their own motivations. And even Princess Mononoke San, she could also be seen as a villain, even though in her eyes, she's the one on the right, and then in Uboshi's eyes, she's the one on the right. And I think that's why it's so important that Ashitaka exists. He's my favorite character.
Oh yeah, he is in the movie or Miyazaki's work as a whole.
No, my favorite character in Miyazaki's work as a whole would probably be Kiki from Kiki's
really?
Delivery.
Yeah, delivery service. All right, we'll
Well,
stick to this one. And
yeah.
why
Yeah.
you think why because why you think Ashtaka is the best character in the whole plot?
Ashitaka is just such a good character, mostly because um
Does he act like kind of the connecting force between a dualistic nature, do you think? Or like a
I got
dividing factor between the two?
I don't know
duelist.
because when I like a character in a plot, I don't usually think of the dualistic natures more. It's probably a kind of a feeling inside of me that tells me it. Yeah, I like the actor. So I wonder if that was the motivation because you kind of just like the guy, or do you have some
No.
strong reasons as to why
Well, now I just have to
Ashtaka
finish
is
the
good?
question. Do you like Ashitaka?
Me, not exactly. That's why that's why I really wanted to know why
Oh
you
my
liked it
gosh, wow.
because I find him. Well, I'm just gonna be blunt. I find him boring and extremely dull. So.
I find him fascinating in conjunction
Yeah,
with
I was going a bit
my
hard. I'm not finding
philosophy.
him. I don't find him extremely dull, but I don't. Yeah, he
From the
doesn't.
Christian perspective, it just seems so wrong.
All right, podcast over. Time to go home. Gotta go to bed.
Yeah, all right. Tell me, what's something about Ashtaka that fascinated you? Caught your fancy?
I think that, well, I don't want to be like tooting my own horn or anything. I think that Ashitaka is the most like how I would handle the situation.
Oh yeah, because you'd want to go for reconciliation. That's I guess part of the thing.
Reconciliation, I guess, and also just Ashitaka is able to see that neither side is in the right, but also neither side is in the wrong. He's able to see that like Uboshi has her reasons for doing things and also the good parts of her nature. And he also sees that in Jigo and Princess Mononoke. I mean, obviously he starts developing romantic feelings for Princess
Yeah,
Mononoke or
yeah.
Sam.
Of
And I
course,
should
she's a
just call
girl.
her Sam. But overall, he's able to see everything almost objectively, but still with emotion. So it's not completely objective because you can see every time that his arm is like acting out, you can see how much like he wants to lash out and he wants to like hurt people but not kill people, but still it's that little fester of hate in him that makes him want to act on it, but he knows that he shouldn't.
Yeah.
And so I just like honor his character because I mean, in that kind of situation, I think most people it would be easy for them to succumb to hate or to really feeling that power. I think any other character in the story, if they were infected with the demon corruption, then I think that they would have fallen far faster and far easier to being consumed and becoming a demon. Because I mean, we see with all the other characters and with the kami, they're portrayed as gods and portrayed as they're gods, and so seeing them get corrupted by this evil and this hate, it makes you wonder, like, Ashitaka must have a little bit more oomph in him. His humanity is still there, whereas like these gods who think that they're better than humans are more easily corrupted.
Right. Yeah.
Does that make sense? And then also my favorite scene is when San goes to assassinate Uboshi, and then Uboshi. And then, there's a scuffle, and then they have a fight, and then Ashitaka comes in between them, and he's trying to control his own hate simultaneously while he's trying to pull these people apart. And then when he goes and picks up San and then walks out and then gets shot anyways, but keeps walking, you can't tell me that that's not a powerful scene.
No. Yeah. Fair enough reasons. Here's to me, Ashtaka, well, for all that he does, he doesn't strike me as a hero. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he's bad. I was just pulling your leg. But the Ashtaka's character to me, well, he gets the Tatari on him. He gets the curse on him, and after that he moves along. And to be honest, he doesn't seem all that perturbed by the thing that really ought to be infiltrating him way more. Now, I guess you mentioned the fact that he's able to kind of resist that. I know how much of that is because of his inner nobility, and how much of that is just the movie plot needs him not to act that crazy. But either way, the guy then moves on, and all he seems to do in the entire story is to say that, oh, please don't hate, please don't hate, please don't hate. No, don't hate me. I'm just saying that he keeps on saying, you guys don't hate each other, and I get why he has some motivation, but dude, have something inside of you. Have at least some kind of a character inside of you, because he seems very placid, very how should I put it? He doesn't seem to have kind of a flavor to him that'll make him a more likable hero type character. Now, I am referring to heroes in, I guess, the Western ideal of a hero, and not our own, which which does tend towards Ashtaka. But I don't find a huge redemptive arc here. I don't find. He seems to resolve conflicts, but I don't find him going through a huge conflict resolution and then having a redemptive arc and then coming in. It seems to me that the guy kind of, says no hate and ends saying no hate.
So this is one of those things that's more of a, I guess it's a storytelling sort of thing, where Ashtaka is in literature and stuff. He's a static character, which means he doesn't change at all.
Right. Yeah.
I can think of one other static character.
The world around him sort of has to change, or he has to help it change. Yeah. I guess you could also say that, like, Natsu in Fairy Tail is a static character. I would say that Luffy is a static character.
I haven't watched One Piece.
I haven't seen One Piece.
Thanks, Jacob.
I haven't seen either of those. I'm terrible. I only watch Bleach, guys. I'm
Well,
only real. I only watch the real stuff. Only the real shonen for me.
I haven't watched Bleach enough to know if Ichigo is a static character or not.
Ichigo is not a static character whatsoever. He's awesome. He's fantastic.
He changes significantly.
Yeah. Significant.
Yeah.
People
Well,
hate that arc. People despise that arc. I don't understand why. It makes me infuriated every time I see it.
You're saying all this stuff and I don't understand. Now I understand why why you're like, I haven't seen that.
You need to watch it. It's so good. But I can think of at least one hero in history that is a static character that does not change, does not have a redemptive arc, and can only really be considered a hero in the sense that he took on everyone's sins. That's Christ, right?
Right.
He doesn't
I
have a
knew you were
redemptive
gonna
arc.
go there, but and we will go there. But just to backtrack a bit on the
Yeah,
whole
am I going too
static
far too
concept thing.
early? I'm going too far too
You
early.
might be, because
Yeah,
we're
maybe.
not going Jesus right now. We will go there. I mean, yeah, sure, but maybe
At least
in
they
a
made the
while.
connection.
I
Yeah,
was
no, that's
thinking
fair.
I was thinking that so there's a lot of different definitions or different viewpoints of how to view a hero.
Yeah.
Like I'm an English major now, so
That's dope.
it's like in every one of my classes, people have a different version of what they consider a hero in literature. So like for one of my creative writing classes, my professor, he regarded every like protagonist, every main character as the hero, even if it's not really a heroic arc or anything like that.
That's dope.
Or anything like epic, like
Yeah,
Achilles or
that's epic.
that kind of
What's he
thing.
talking about?
Yeah. And most of it is just like normal life, you know? And your hero can technically be a villain in the sense that they aren't great. You just have to have a likable character, not necessarily a good character. Well, wait. I
Yeah.
mean a well-written character, but not a morally good character, as long as they're well-written and a hero of their own story.
I see the
But then
motivation.
other people are like, I'm not gonna call protagonists heroes because that means, you know, it has all these connotations with superheroes and legendary heroes and like
And even just morality, right?
yeah, and morality. So I think it really just depends on the use of the word hero as opposed to like
Maybe,
whatever.
but and I guess I will I will push back there, because here's my question. That's relatively new in the way people think of heroes, but we'll go back to the monomyth. And a monomythic storyline is usually a U-shaped storyline, right? So if you got a monomyth, you start with the hero who's flawed, probably, and you go through the stages, and there's a redemptive arc, and then there's the U-shaped monomythic storyline that is almost almost pervasive in all cultures. You can take even Indian cultures, for example, and you'd find myths and legends that depict these people as being flawed, and then going through this stage and then coming through. So the monomythic storyline seems to pervade all of literature, or at least all of myths in some sense. And the reason why I think that is the same reason why Tolkien seems to think that's the case, because it evokes inside of us a secondary belief that although that's not the way things are, that's not how heroes are in real life. That's what I want to be. That's the motivation.
Mhm.
That's how I want life to be, because I want it to start in this particular way, and then I want to go through the conflict resolution, and then go through redemption and arrive at this utopia, if you will. And
Mhm.
and that's not happening with a lot of modern stories. I'm not I'm not dissing on Ashtaka all the time. Poor guy, he's
Mhm.
good. I'm just I'm just saying that a modern take on what a hero is seems to me to be lacking in plain old human emotion, plain old human desire to see something like that, to see a guy start from being flawed and end up being great. Why are children's movies so amazingly simple? in the sense that taking Chronicles of Narnia or the Lord of the Rings or all of those sorts of things, even old fairy tales. Why are they so simple? It seems to me that they all reflect this monomythic storyline of you starting at a particular position, being flawed, or being in some sense not complete, and you go through the sages and you end at the redemptive arc. And to
Hmm.
me, that that ought to be, in some sense, at least make some part of a story. I'm not saying that all stories should follow the monomyth.
Hmm.
Obviously, they wouldn't. But to cut off that narrative as a whole and then take in a character and assume that he's a hero simply because he's well, not trying to be antagonistic, but I'm just saying if he's just because he's likable. I don't know. It seems that. All right, so yeah, that's my take on why I'm not a huge fan of ashtaka, or for that matter, stories that depict heroes as just.
Static.
But yeah, static, and having not much of a change in their
Well,
character.
let's pose the question then. If you view Princess Mononoke as San is the hero and Ashitaka is the, I guess, Deuteragonist, which is the secondary character,
Yeah.
but we're seeing the story unfold through his eyes, but he's not the main character, or he's not the hero.
That
I would agree with
that
that.
that yeah.
That makes
Jake, you
sense.
wanna comment? Because yeah, I'd like to hear your views on that, and then I'll share mine.
I have a
What do you think
fun.
of?
So, if you guys haven't figured this out, I am currently studying the Japanese language, of
Yeah,
course,
yeah. Of
because
course, you
I watch
mentioned
a lot
that
of
just
it.
I think just once, maybe twice, maybe too many times. But yeah, go.
I don't know what you're talking about. Like we haven't mentioned, like you haven't mentioned Ashitaka.
Yeah, go on.
So the name of the movie itself is Princess Mononoke, or Mononoke Hime, which means princess or daughter of a lord. That's Hime means princess or daughter of a lord.
Yeah.
Mononoke, this is where it gets interesting. Mononoke is vengeful ghost or spirit. So Princess Mononoke or Mononoke Hime literally means daughter slash princess of the spirit of vengeance. So is she really the hero of the story if she's a daughter of negative energy?
Well, in that sense, do you think that Princess Mononoke is in reference to San or Eboshi?
No, that's actually a good point.
Maybe there's a little bit of both in them.
I think it's both now. I used to think that it was just San, but now I'm thinking that
This is how we do
maybe
podcast,
it
people.
applies to both of them.
But you know, to your
And
point,
even
Jacob,
even the wolf, I forget her name. Let me look at my
Oh,
character sheet.
Moro.
Yeah, Maru, I think. Oh, yeah, Moro.
Yeah. So no. All right. So she's a daughter of a vengeful spirit, the daughter of the spirit of vengeance,
which
and
is kind of explained further on in the movie. For those of you who haven't watched the movie, of course, we're going to spoil the heck out of this.
oh yeah. But
Yeah. So in the
why does
movie,
that preclude her from being a hero? I'm not sure about that. I guess yeah. All right. She's a daughter of a vengeful spirit, the spirit of
but
vengeance. But why does that preclude her from being the hero of the movie?
so she that's the vengeance part is the daughter part is kind of explained a little further in the film where the wolves, I forget which one, basically says, I saw all these people running away from, I think, the boars, and they abandoned their daughter to get away and escape. And I took her in,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
and raised her. So
Yeah.
that kind of intrigued me a little bit. Because
Oh yeah,
again,
no. Here's my question though. Why does that preclude her from being the hero of the story? Because you mentioned we were talking about her being the hero, and you mentioned that she was the daughter of the spirit of vengeance, and I wanted to know why that would make her well not a fit candidate to be the hero.
hmm,
Because I think it does kind of make her. I
yeah, I'm
don't know.
trying to find words to articulate that. Because not all vengeance is morally reprehensible.
Yeah, but even if it is reprehensible, I think that adds to it. So you start off being a reprehensible character, and then you know, and then she changes in at the end.
I think you like this idea, Kira.
Yeah. I'm a huge fan of the monomyth. I'll be fair. But even without the monomyth, she does have a change, doesn't she? Yeah, I am inclined to dynamic characters, not passive static ones. So obviously, I'm attracted more to Hime, and she does go through a change in which initially she hates the crap out of almost everyone, and at the end, no, she's not that. She understands what's going on. She understands her role in the environment. She understands that there is a symbiotic relationship there between the Irontown workers and the forest, and it's not just yay the forest, yay rural guys, or just yay progressive guys, but it's a symbiosis. It's a mutual relationship. She understands that. So to me, she kind of represents the heroic ideal in some sense. So I
The
guess that's
heroic
why
ideal is, in some sense, in this movie, is kind of coming to a realization of
the
overcoming
fact
the
that
vengeance.
even more than that, the fact that nature and man have to be in a symbiotic relationship if you are to survive.
Hmm.
There is no singular. You can't just go in there and say, I love the forest and that's it. And I'm not gonna allow anyone to slash and burn for progressive needs. Nor is it, well, I need advancements, so let's cut out the forest. It's a bit of both, and to be able to understand that seems to me part of the growing up in this movie, part of the realization that Mononoke Hime goes through. So I guess her realization and subsequent change in her character kind of makes her sort of like the hero of the story to me. I don't know. And of course, they
Hmm.
do put she is the title. She's the titular character. It's not Prince Ashtaka. It's Princess Mononoke.
I mean, I mean, it wouldn't be Prince Ashtaka. It would be like, um,
Plain old Ashtaka.
Shitaka-san.
Ashtaka-san,
Yeah. It
Ashitaka
doesn't
OG.
ring. Yeah, it doesn't have a great ring to it. Yeah.
Doesn't work quite as well, does it?
Yeah. Good old Ashtaka-san. Hayao
Well,
Miyazaki's
Ashitaka
third movie.
OG. He is a prince.
Yeah. Right. He is the tribes, the Amishi tribes prince. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He's like the last
Oh yeah, that's right. I
heir.
forgot that. That's
Yeah.
so far in
I
the
know.
beginning of the
It
movie.
it
I keep
never
forgetting
okay.
that.
My one problem with the movie is that the beginning never comes back.
Never, except
Yeah. That's
for
true.
when they talk about the curse, the Tari.
Yeah, the old lady basically says, "Get out," and that's it. And
You
you
never
don't
hear
see.
from the sister
Yeah,
again. You never hear from the old people again.
yeah, that's sad.
He never goes
Yeah, that is
back.
sad.
So there's
So much
not
for
that
the
like
youth.
circular hero arc. He doesn't actually go back. She's just like, get out of here. And
Yeah,
like,
that's
he
it.
broke the
Yeah.
curse. Can he go back?
I've never really. Yeah. I try to. Well, where did I? Yeah, I read somewhere that he didn't need to because he now lives in the Iron Town and he's now part of that or something. I don't know.
I think that that just seems like an excuse for not
Yeah,
tying the
right.
loop,
Yeah,
right?
because yeah, he it would have been better if he'd gone back and ended the U. I'm just gonna stay on the U. I'm sorry, but yeah.
I think it works with Miyazaki's environmental vision though, because
Ah.
if you have the iron workers, right? And then if you
Mm-hmm.
and then the nature part, that something akin to that ending shot like one of those final scenes in the movie where they realized it's the same forest, but it's not the same forest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the forest, not forest kind of thing. Yeah, because the gods are gone, the kami's gone. It's
Mhm.
just nature red in tooth and claw. Is that?
I think that's
Mhm.
kind of what he might have been going for, in the same vein as we think Ashitaka doesn't go back home, or quote
Mhm.
unquote home, because he
You
found
wanna
a
elaborate that a bit? Because yeah, I'd like to hear that
because
fleshed
he
out.
found
So
a new home with San, or Princess Mononoke, and
yeah, but
iron
good old
workers.
son goes into the forest with the wolf buddies.
Yeah,
Uh,
he lives in the iron workers. That's another. So why would he go back if he has the iron workers? The environmental, because there's always this balance in his movies of nature and progress. He's always
yeah,
trying to say both don't have to be at odds, as though they often are. And
yeah.
I think
sometimes that conflict is supposed to be there.
yeah,
And
I think that that's reflective though of the industrialization and westernization of Japan. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Miyazaki was going through that with the nation. You know, he was exposed to that as Japan started becoming more industrialized, and nowadays it's kind of a lot more balanced between nature and city. Well, I mean, not in like the clusters and stuff, but I watched this amazing documentary. It's called
hold on, I want to type it.
I had to I think it's on Netflix. Earth's Enchanted Islands.
Earth's Enchanted.
There's three of them, and it does Honshu, Hokkaido, and the southernmost islands.
Yeah.
And highly recommend, because one, it shows a beautiful version of Japan, mostly within the rural regions and all that. And it also really shows how nature and humans have just become symbiotic together. Like there's a scene with rice paddies, and the frogs have like helped regulate the pest control. Like they can just use the frogs. They don't need to use any pesticides or anything. And
Really?
then and then
Fascinating.
in Hokkaido, so you know the Japanese crane
Mhm.
um nearly went extinct around earlier in the 1900s, I think, or maybe later. But the Japanese crane almost went extinct in Hokkaido, specifically. That's where it is, and they were all like dying out and everything. And then eventually, uh, like their estuaries and wherever they would breed, they were all going away, and they didn't know what to do. So then they started like trying to help the cranes as much as they can. So in the Hokkaido documentary, it kind of shows that in the winter, all these cranes, they don't have anywhere to go, and they're all like starving. So the people will just go out and feed them because they can't find food anymore, because the humans destroyed where they could find food. So like in this way, they're keeping the cranes alive just from the generosity of humans, but simultaneously the cranes were dying because of the
Human
greed of humans.
industrialization. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, gotcha.
So
That sounds a bit like Token's idea of industrialization a little bit too.
mhm.
Because in Lord of the
Huh.
Rings, at the end of it, you have
Okay.
this really isn't shown much in the movies. It's my never-ending qualms. But
Is the extended edition, or
I'd have to rewatch them, which is a good idea.
I want to watch the extended editions so that I
But
can.
they go back to the Shire and they see Saruman is at work with his industrialization of the Shire. And it's like an entire chapter of them trying to get a whole bunch of basically this little hobbit army and go and kick Saruman out. And it's like, and it is interesting. That's
Yeah. How do we reach here? All right. It's industrialization for that matter, and yeah. I guess symbiosis is the which is again why I think Hime represents the heroic ideal, because she changes and understands that symbiosis is the way forward, not isolationist ideas of either the forest, either nature or just progress. But yeah, coming to industrialization, there's obviously a certain we might think of progress versus nature, man versus nature, and then there's sort of the Luddite inference, if you will, with how San sees Lady Boshi and the ironworkers, and Lady Boshi sees San. How much of a symbiosis do you think that in the end there is? Because do you think that both of the parties realize that we ought to work together? Do you think that is what Miyazaki's saying to through the movie? I'm not entirely sure. I guess that's part of it. And if it is, if that's the only thing, if it's a sort of environmental message to the audience, do you how do you view that in relation to modern environmental movies, where I guess it's more tilted towards the environmental side of things? Is Miyazaki's environmental philosophy better than Western environmental philosophy in movies? Is that the case?
Are you talking about the Lorax?
Yeah, I'm talking about quite a number of things now.
Fun thing about that one, I saw that in theaters.
So,
did you read the book first? How dare you?
Look, I like Dr. Seuss and all, but meh.
Oh, I like green hips and ham. I like them. Sam, I am.
I think Western movies about the environment.
Let me just qualify the statement though. It's modern Western movies, too. Yeah. Although if you've got ancient Western.
Is there really a difference though? A lot of them kind of have almost the same themes and the same sort of approach to it. They're very.
I don't remember. Are there earlier Western movies that depicted the environment in any way? I don't know.
Well, I was just thinking the Lorax came out a long time ago, and then the new Lorax came out a long time ago. My only gauge is the Lorax, apparently.
Yeah.
But I'm sure that there's others. I'm sure there's others that I've seen.
Because I'm thinking of movies where they talk about the environment a whole lot, where it's about
Happy Feet.
Okay, I liked that one. That was cute.
You like Happy Feet? I think it's an awful movie.
It's an awful movie, but it's also a cute movie.
Yeah, we're talking about cutesy movies now. I was going for a more, I guess.
I was thinking of.
You need to pitch some Western movies that you're thinking about. Then.
Yeah, here's the thing, because almost every movie seems to have an environmental message these days. So that's why I'm finding it hard to pin down one. But the idea is basically that mankind is destroying nature, that almost all of his inventions are detrimental to the environment, and that in our goal to protect the environment, we might need to abandon our comfortable homes, or comforts in some sense. At least that's the idea that I get from a lot of Western movies, and I guess Western environmental philosophy as a whole. So forget movies. Let's take Western environmental philosophy, so I can be as vague as I want to without being specific. Yay! Taking Western environmental philosophy, it seems to me from the outside that you guys, and I'm putting both of you guys in the Western camp here, even though you can. Yeah, I'm putting both of you guys there. It seems that there is a huge push towards environmentalism, and a view that we ought to be going towards a more serene, harmonic type of yeah, not harmonic. You ought to be going to a more older view, a more ancient view that these comforts are not that great, that we need to cut off a lot of these comforts that we have, and that we ought to be, well, effectively ascetics
Oh,
in some sense.
sort of like a combination of minimalism and
Yeah, a lot of emphasis on minimalism, a lot of emphasis on cutting emissions
yeah.
and the subsequent well, decrease in the number of cars and all of that. So there is a huge push, certainly. But what's the difference there? How do you view that modern environmental Western philosophy and Miyazaki's environmental philosophy depicting through all of his movies, but especially Mononoke, since I haven't seen the others?
You haven't seen the others yet?
He's seen Castle in the Sky.
Yeah, just
I have
I
Grave with the
forget though.
Fireflies in
So
my.
so we
Swimming
don't.
Castle.
Yeah, I've seen Castle in the Sky, but I don't remember it as much because I watched it, yeah, kind of a long time ago. So we won't go there.
Sure.
We'll stick to Mononoke. Yeah.
Yes, we will stick to my okay.
All right. So what do you guys make of the distinction? Is there a distinction? Am I making it out of thin air, or is there really a distinction between Miyazaki's philosophy and Western philosophy of environmentalism? And do you
Uh,
think the West, you guys, can learn something from Miyazaki?
No, I don't think you're making a distinction out of thin air. I think it is there. I think Miyazaki's environmental philosophy is more rooted in Japanese culture and basically their religious history. Well, quote unquote religious, because Shintoism, Buddhism aren't religion.
Ideology. Yeah, we get
Yeah,
you.
Yeah,
you guys
yeah.
get it.
Mhm.
The listeners should get that at this point. And I think the push for minimalism over here is more geared towards humanism.
Oh, I like that. I want you to elaborate on that a bit. The push towards minimalism is more geared towards humanism. Why do you think that is? And how do you think that's different in the case of Miyazaki?
I
Uh,
think
uh,
Miyazaki pushes for a symbiosis,
cool.
whereas I think Westerners, specifically those who push for like recycle more, which I think you should do, and
Yeah, yeah.
those who, you know, less carbon emissions, that kind of
Hmm.
stuff. How do I articulate
I
that?
think that's the general Western ideology, but I mean, also it's not
It's
exactly.
more for personal benefit, I think.
No, I
I
think
think,
it's more for personal solace as opposed
yeah,
to actually making that much of a difference, if that makes sense.
yeah.
Because
It's touted as making a difference, but
Yeah,
difference
yeah.
for
but the
what? Whereas I think Miyazaki actually
I don't know.
solidifies the difference.
You got
There's
cut off
some,
there.
there's some environmental politics to get into, but it's that I think it's more about like someone being personally like I'm doing my part, despite the fact that their part isn't really that impactful in the grander scheme because the ones that make the most emissions or all that kind of stuff is industries, specifically like the food industry and the meat industry. Like that's where all the emissions are coming from. But I think the philosophy with general public nowadays there is kind of split in half because everything's split in half nowadays. But there are those people that um believe what you're kind of getting at, where there are people that think that we can cut down on our emissions and plant trees and all that, which is a good place to go. And then there are also those other people in the camp. I think that this is the minority where they're like, it's too late. We're just gonna keep
Yeah,
going on.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I ask that. Well, there certainly are political issues there, but I wanted to get more to the philosophical side of things because there was this video by weisgrach, and he takes in Princess Mononoke. Have you seen that? So
I know
his
the channel, and that
yeah,
the
it,
fact you
it's
mentioned
it's
that was kind of
pretty good.
humorous.
But here's the thing: his take on Princess Mononoke well angered me, and And that's why, and I'm gonna put out a video on that because I wanna write something about it. But here's the thing, here's a distinction that he made, and I wanted to ask you guys the same thing. He talks about Western view of the world before the environmental push came in, although even now, I guess. He says that there's Western materialism runs rampant through your culture,
I would agree with.
that it is rooted. And here's the thing: it's anthropocentric, meaning that it's centered on humans, because of the theology that the West lives on, which is Christian theology. So he says that Christian theology makes you anthropocentric, makes you way more driven towards the human side of things, while Shintoistic beliefs and Shintoistic metaphysic is not anthropocentric. It's more egalitarian. It's way more egalitarian. It's not how can humans benefit off of this. It's about well, how can all of us move together, and he brings his divide, and that's where he goes with his division. So the West, because of its uh, culture rooted in the Bible, is anthropocentric, while the East, and specifically Japan, because of its Shintoistic metaphysic, is not anthropocentric. Is way more communal. Is way more symbiotic. At least it's not anthropocentric. And he says that such a view, such a notion, is in fact well, met with disdain by a lot of the Japanese because of their belief in Shintoism. Here's the distinction that I draw, and that's why I asked you guys about the environmental thing. So the philosophy behind that is obviously that Christianity makes you anthropocentric. Christianity makes you think humans first, and that Shintoistic metaphysic, or maybe even whatever other metaphysic that's rooted in nature, makes you think otherwise. What do you think of that? Because I certainly don't think that's the case.
I can understand why you would be angered by that video.
Yeah, I am, and and yeah, but I wanted to take your thoughts on it before I
Are
went
you also
berserk.
angered, Jacob?
My anger would take a little bit of time to explain, but I'm willing to explain it.
Oh, okay. So, okay. You're like, I'm just trying to be the ashtaka right now, you know.
Oh, please don't be the ashtaka.
I,
Please
I,
don't
under,
be
I
the ashtaka.
understand.
I don't want no hate.
I understand why he
Yeah.
was infuriated by the video, because I'm not entirely sure you could call the Bible and Christian theology anthropocentric.
No, it certainly isn't. It's not anthropocentric.
I don't think so.
Yeah, it's theocentric. So that's where
Yeah,
I differ with him entirely.
yeah,
But
God is for God.
he might have a point in the sense that the West has or might have become anthropocentric. So I'm not living in the West. I defer to you guys
I would agree that
on what
Western
goes on
culture
there.
is anthropocentric,
Mhm.
100%.
Yeah,
Because even the advertisements and stuff, like you can have this, you can have this. Scotiabank's motto, for crying out loud, is "You're richer than you think." For
Mhm.
Pete's sake, come on,
which is never true. But yeah,
come on. So yeah, the Western culture as a whole is definitely anthropocentric, but theological Christian theology, no, not at all.
yeah. But Jannette, you want to add something to it? What do you think of the distinction? Is there a distinction?
Oh, I was gonna say that um I think it's very broad, and this tends to be a thing that a lot of not a lot, not necessarily a lot, but what I've seen a lot of recently is that um people tend to blame Christianity for certain things within Western culture when
Yeah,
it's not really Christianity that imposed that ideology or pattern or practice necessarily, so much as the culture that sprung up around it and the way that society molded, not just around, the idea of Christianity, but the different versions that people created of Christianity, like
yeah,
their own personal ones.
yeah, yeah. Their
Yeah.
own personal ideas of Christianity. Yeah, yeah. That is true. So let's leave the culture aside and let's take both philosophies. a bit controversial. Yes, I know, but we will go there.
Oh,
Um, we'll take Shintoistic philosophy and we'll take Christian philosophy, and there is a I'm gonna well, here's a term that'll help, I guess. Shintoistic metaphysics or Shintoistic philosophy is rooted in the equality of beings. One might call it ontological egalitarianism, in that all beings are equal and have equal worth and equal rights, and it's yeah, equality seems to run through. Whereas in the Christian philosophy, it's not entirely the case. There is a hierarchy. There is God, and there is man, and then there are beasts of the field. So while we are not egalitarians in that sense, we certainly do respect nature and animals, but we're not egalitarians, at least not in those terms. So how would you view the difference between a Christian view of nature and us as being stewards of creation, and an Eastern? Well, Eastern is way too broad, so I'll stick to Shintoism, and a Shintoistic view, at least that portrayed in Princess Mononoke. The view portrayed in Princess Mononoke, we'll stick to that. The philosophy of nature portrayed in Princess Mononoke against the philosophy of nature and man, according to a Christian philosophical view. Put those two against each other, and let's see. And I want to see what you guys think about that. Well, my thoughts are pretty simple. It's what I just mentioned, but I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, on the egalitarianism. And do you think that's a better approach? Obviously not, but do you think that that can be incorporated into the Christian view in some sense?
The egalitarian or the
The
Shintoist?
egalitarian view,
Oh,
obviously.
okay. I was like,
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah. Just to clarify, the egalitarian view. Not advocating for Shinto Christianity right now. So
we're gonna go C.S. Lewis up here. Come on.
yeah. So is there some merit to that kind of view? I don't think there is. I think there is a hierarchy. I think there is God, then there is man, then there is beast of the field. But yeah, what do you guys think of the distinction there? Is the distinction that I drew sound based on
Think so.
Mononoke and Christianity? And if so, what do you guys make of the distinction?
I think that distinction is present. Yes. And I think scripture goes very far to make that distinction. In Genesis 3, somewhere in Genesis 3, after the fall, God specifically says, cursed is the ground because of this. That's it, right? Because of sin and death. For your sake, you shall toil. For this, you shall toil the earth. Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely a distinction. In Shintoistic environmental philosophy, I think I see more of a hopeful symbiosis, whereas I think in Christian theology and our environmental philosophy, I think we see more of a we're supposed to steward the world and the earth and everything in it, but it's already cursed. I think we do have to keep that in account. Everything's going to be made new and restored in the new creations, the new heaven and the new earth.
mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
there's kind of like it matters, and it matters, but at the same time, there's still a curse on it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's what it means though to be a steward.
Yeah.
Or a lot of times, specifically in the Bible, they use shepherding specifically as kind of an allegory. I mean, you have the sheep and they get lost, or you have the sheep and some of them die and some of them get diseased, or or anything like that. Not to say that people are sheep.
People are sheep.
But just that
Said it for you, Jannette.
like we're shepherds or stewards, and stewarding. I'm thinking of it in terms of Skyrim for some reason. But where you're
You
like
like
given a
Skyrim?
house. Yeah, I love Skyrim, but you're given a house and you have to, make sure everything is all right with it. Or I mean, technically you're the Thane and you just go off on your adventures, and so you hire a steward, and then that steward oversees your house. So I mean, in that sense, you know, even though we acknowledge that not everything is going to be perfect within the house, we're still going to take care of it as best as we can.
Right.
If that makes
Yeah. Yeah.
As best
Yeah.
we can, yes. I agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I mean, I think that where you were almost headed with it, where it's like, oh, it's cursed. So I mean, it's not like we
No,
should break the curse or
it's not
anything.
like it's
Worthless.
not like it's not a pointless thing. No. No,
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
think that at all. Because
No.
I
Yeah.
think
Yeah. Stewarding the environment is not a pointless endeavor, but it
no.
can certainly be stretched far beyond what we ought to be. But yeah.
Mhm.
That's basically the distinction that I was trying to come at, because I think there is a distinction there. You can't view a pig and a man as the same.
No.
So yeah. So I guess in the Christian view, there's a
Which
harmony
is
in
interesting you
hierarchy.
bring that up because Miyazaki has a fascination with pigs.
Yeah, it certainly does. So, yeah, but
Lucky is
yeah, that's
man.
but yeah. So that's one distinction that I thought would be fun to talk about. So that's it's the egalitarianism there. But there's also the idea that before all of this, that there was this harmony,
Hmm.
right? So to I think it was the English dub. This was the quote, and I'm just gonna read it because I like it. In ancient times, the land lay covered in forests, where from ages long past, I like the way that goes, dwelt the spirits of the gods. Back then, man and beast lived in harmony, but as time went by, most of the great forests were destroyed. Those that remained were guarded by gigantic beasts, who owed their allegiance to the great forest spirit. For those were the days of gods and demons. So, so I guess there is a longing, right, towards this age of harmony, towards this age where all of them lived in together, and that certainly is not the case at the end of the movie, where it's like you mentioned, it's just nature now. It's not filled with kami. It's not the Shishigami's forest. It's not filled with gods and goddesses or demons for that matter. It's just nature red in tooth and claw.
Hmm.
But there's also at the end a small kodama. I think that's what they call it at the end, which I guess kind of refers to the fact that no, maybe that isn't the case. Maybe life can still. I guess there might still be the presence of these kami there, even though not as uh, numerous as it was before.
Yeah.
What do you guys make of that?
I think it's just a nod that life goes on, The magic continues, but maybe not. I mean, the great spirit is gone, and all of these gods have also fallen, but like a new age is still, or life goes on. That's the simple term for it. Life goes on, and some
Or
things
does
survive, and
life
some things.
have to go on? Is there a depressing tone to it? Man, life has to go on even though all of these things have
It,
happened.
it's kind of a bittersweet tone for, but I think that's kind of all over Miyazaki's works, is that bittersweetness.
Yeah.
And I find something akin to the Garden of Eden in the ending scene and the beginning scene and the
Hmm.
contrast, because the beginning scene is like, hey, remember when everything was really good and cool and everything worked in harmony? And then you
Yeah,
have, oh, hey, look at this. We have something like a harmony, but it's not quite a harmony. Whereas the Christian has the hope of a perfect harmony again.
Hmm. So
yeah.
there's a sense of loss there, right?
Yeah, we
And
still
I
have
think that
that.
the loss specifically is just the result of consequence. Like there's consequences for their hate, for them, you know, going out to fight each other and everything. There's a consequence for that. And I wanted to touch on the theme of hate specifically. We're talking about environmentalism, which is a thing where it's like human versus nature. But I actually think that it's not really human versus nature, so much as ideal versus ideal, or I would say human versus human, but the commies, you know, always say that they're not human, but they display very human qualities. And so it's almost like they're the same, but they just don't recognize it. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
If everybody has a comedy, that makes sense, though.
Mm-hmm. So I think that it's about hate, and how it like eats away. I mean, they keep saying it is very on the nose, but
ashtaka always reminds us of it. But
yes,
like you always
don't hate
reminds
each
us
other,
of
don't hate each
reminds us of it.
but yeah, no, I agree. Hate, yes. Or is it just hate, or is it an amalgam of greed and pride?
Well, isn't hate a result of greed and pride though? I mean, I'm thinking in broad terms, almost thinking about our political and social climate right now is that some people are filled with so much pride in themselves that it festers to where they end up hating anyone else, the other.
The outside of the group, tribalistic mentality.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people refer to it as the other, like when you're ostracizing one specific stance or several stances that don't align with your own, then that's the other. And I think that that's where Iboshi, she's coming from a place where she doesn't understand the gods, she doesn't know them or anything like that, and so she outwardly hates them. Well, I don't think that her hate is as manifested, but she like doesn't understand them. She doesn't try to. She just wants to get rid of them so that she can forward her own agenda for her own people. And
to help her people. Yeah.
Contrast that to San, and San, she doesn't understand humans. You know, she was raised by wolves, and she only understands her side of things. She doesn't want to try to understand the other side. I mean, but we see that change. But still, like, they're both in a place where they're so prideful that they're in the right, that their way is right, and maybe you could also chalk it up to greed. Like, maybe it's not greed in the sense that they want money, but they definitely desire something.
Yeah.
Let me see. I just looked this up because I kind of think it pertains to a lot of Miyazaki's works. Most Buddhists believe that the negative actions and beliefs of human beings, such as greed, anger, and ignorance, give rise to evil. So it's an inward thing that creates the negativity.
You mean those feelings make you evil, not that they are in and of itself, but that they grow inside of you and fester and then make you an evil person. Is that how?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Because here's the thing. Assuming Shintoism and a sort of a watery moralism, because as far as I've read it and understood it, it's not there's no moral essentialism. You're not looking at it from objectively good or bad lenses. It's not how they view the world, at least from what I've read. So I'm not gonna assume that I'm right here, but I'm gonna put this out there. With that view in mind, that that there is no essentialism, that there's no objectively good or evil thing. It's just a sort of amalgam, if you will, of all of these things coming in. Where do you see the evil in Mononoke Hime? Where is the evil and where is the good? It is hard to figure those things out because it seems that that's not really how the philosophy works. It's not really how Miyazaki films portray them, or that's not how Shintoism works. Because you don't have a good or evil. It's culturally relative. So what's the good here? What's the attainable goal here? Let's leave symbiosis aside. Let's leave that for a moment. Yes, we get it. Man versus nature. No, you got to live in harmony. All right. But where's the good and where's the evil?
I think that the most important thing about Miyazaki's works specifically is that there's not really a defined big bad or angelic figure, I would say. Is that everyone is human. Even the kami are human in soul, because they're capable of human emotions and everything like that. And it's that how do I say this?
They both reach for the attainable, and they both reach for the goal without actually knowing it.
Yeah, I think that the most important thing about having a story is that you have human characters, and I think that you can have like truly evil people because they do exist, but at the end of the day, usually that's not the case, and usually they do have a reason why they feel that way, or they have their own goals that conflict with the hero's goals or whatever. And so, I mean, we can think about it in biblical terms or biblical stories. Is that, can you really say that David was like good all the way through, or even Nebuchadnezzar, who did a bunch of horrible things, he gets a redemption arc. But still, like, you have these characters and they do evil things, but they have a purpose for them. They have thoughts behind them and a reason why they're doing this, even if it conflicts with someone else's views. They think that they're in the right, or they know that they're doing something wrong, but they're doing it anyways.
Yeah.
Because it suits them.
Yes, that's the point. What is the wrong? Because I get it, but I'm gonna go back there because what is the wrong? I'm still trying to figure that out in a Shintoistic setting in the Miyazaki films, because apart from what benefits the group, I fail to see where the evil comes in, or what precisely is wrong and not wrong. If I'm putting that.
Should I break them down? I mean, we've kind of been dancing around it the whole time.
Yeah.
So like, okay, I'll just do the main figureheads of the story. Is that San. So they all have right and wrong within them, right? Kind of these battling moralities, but it's not battling inside themselves. It's actually more like Ashitaka recognizes that they have some good and some bad. So like for San specifically, he sees that like she cares about the forest, she cares about her friends, the gods and the animals. But she also wants to kill someone even though it won't solve anything. Like he recognizes that, oh, she wants to murder someone because she thinks that that's how that'll solve everything. So like there's like kind of that moral dilemma where she's fighting for something that he does agree with, but she's going about it in a way that is morally questionable. And then Eboshi is also kind of the same thing, where and like Ashitaka, that's why it's important for us to watch Ashitaka go through this, is because he sees the ironworks and he sees these women who are put in positions like where they can earn a living. And as it says, like throughout when he's meeting all these people, is that Eboshi is taking these girls out of brothels, out of prostitution, and she's giving them work and husbands and giving them a chance at second life, because if they were in brothels, then I mean, they kind of insinuate that they would have an awful life. And considering this is based off of Japan, like it'd be pretty bad. And so she's giving these people like another life, and of course the lepers too, that she has taken in when everyone else has thrown them out, and she's given them a purpose. She's taught them how to use these skills to defend themselves and everything like that. And even the men have a role within her and within her society. And so she kind of supports this mentality of equality within the Iron Town. But he also, like, when she starts being like, oh, I'm gonna go kill those beasts, and oh, I killed she shot the first boar at the beginning of the film, where she takes pride in that, and she's like, oh yeah, I shot him, and it took me a long time to get him, but I did it. And she also points to all the cut trees, and then she's like, look at all those creatures, they're trying to plant trees, and continues shooting them away. So like he sees that, like, the kindness within her, where she's taking in these people, but also like the evil within her that's inflicting harm upon stuff that is attacking her or whatever, kind of that kind of thing. And you could go through the other ones where they have like their own goals and everything.
The reason I asked though was you see, that's true. That's true that these are morally good goals, and then there are these evil things that goes on. But assuming that there is no moral law, there is no universal moral law in the Miyazaki philosophy, in the Shintoistic philosophy, why on earth is kindness good? Why is killing someone bad? Why is killing a pig bad? Why is killing a human even more bad? You assume.
Isn't that interesting? I think it just goes into, what is it called? There's like a word for it, subjective morality or something like that.
Yeah, it's moral relativism.
Yeah,
and so that's part of the thing that I wanted to ask is, if you assume moral relativism, and it seems to me that Miyazaki does, then it becomes harder for us, if we understand the philosophy, to then go in and say, well, these are the good things that she does, so he does. These are the bad things that she does, so he does. Because at the end of the day, those are objective terms which don't seem to exist in the philosophy.
Isn't that interesting? That there is, I think, well, I'm just saying that that's how the story portrays it,
Yeah, because
but there's not necessarily a ruler to put those morals up against. Like it's purely just Ashitaka and his culture, you could say. Like he's bringing in his culture and imposing it on these other people. In some senses,
you could say that, because it's Ashtaka bringing this culture of, well, not hating these both of the sides, and the sides coming together. And why should that be considered good is very, at least it's something to think about. If you don't assume a moral law, if you don't assume morality as objective, and you go about it in a culturally relative sort of manner, in which I guess Miyazaki does, and the philosophy portrays that in Shintoism as well, it is fun to think of why then one would think that these are the good things and these are the bad things.
Jacob can take this one.
Jake, you got thoughts on that?
I'm just trying to think of a way to rephrase your question, because I'm not sure if I caught it all.
You can ask him to just say it again,
You want me to rephrase it?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, so what I see in Shintoistic philosophy, the little that I read of it, and in Miyazaki's film, is that there is no moral essentialism, which I talked about earlier, that you do not have what is called an objective moral good or bad. And assuming that, then why should you consider some acts to be good and some acts to be evil? Some acts of Lady Eboshi's to be good, the acts of Ashtaka coming here and, like she said, bringing them together is alien to that culture. So he's bringing something that's new and yet is seen as good. But why should that be seen as good if you do not have a higher moral law, an objective idea of what is good and what's bad?
I'm going to add also another layer just to also think about is that it's even though Shintoism is very prolific within the film, another thing that we have to keep in mind is that Japan is not just Shinto, but also Buddhist a lot.
Buddhistic.
Like,
yeah.
They're very interconnected, and sometimes they're blended together, even if
that's true.
ideals don't really match.
That's true. But
so I think that the Buddhism morality might also have some merit.
Good point. But even given Buddhism, there is no moral lawgiver there as well. There's no morality. There's no moral essentialism as such in Buddhism as well.
Yeah.
So because as we mentioned earlier, because Gautama Buddha was a person, and Siddhartha Gautama, that's a name. So he was not a god, and it's a great religion. But again, there's this idea of sorry, there not being a moral code as we see in monotheistic religions.
Mm-hmm.
So, and let's leave religion aside for a moment. Let's assume Miyazaki's philosophy. It does seem to permeate through his movies that moral essentialism is not really the case. It's culturally relative, what's good and what's bad. But if it is culturally relative, what's good and what's bad, why are these actions, why some of the actions that Lady Boshi does be considered as bad? Why some of the actions that Ashtaka does considered as good? And why...
I think I can answer that.
Yeah, go
because on. I think this movie is very heavy on the idea of kami, right? And that philosophy requires that specific hierarchy that instead of the hierarchy we have, they have the equality theory.
Yeah, the egalitarianism. Yeah,
the egalitarianism. Yes, thank you. And I think if it's not aligning with equality, then it's objective, then it's can be equated as to good or bad. And doesn't fit with the egalitarianism.
Yeah, that's the thing, because if they're all equal, then how can you justify killing something for something else? Because if equality is the only law, if that is the end all and the be all of morality here, of whatever morality that we assume, then you can't justify killing anything. You can't justify killing a boar possessed by a demon, because the demon is also equal in an egalitarian philosophy, as is the boar, as is Ashtaka, as is Lady Eboshi, as is the Shishigami.
It's interesting too, because I think if we assume that everything is equal and then nature is also an equal, how nature functions as an equal thing, and you see nature as like the fox will hunt something or scavenge for something, and then you have the wolf that will hunt something, that's natural, that's part of the equality. Then you have some things like some idea of something like wars can be equal, naturally equal of equality. It's kind of strange to think of it in that sense, instead of morals, but in equals. But I think I can see where they're coming from. I definitely don't agree with it at all. I think it's actually kind of morally reprehensible, but
at the when push comes to shove, but it doesn't usually, because I think the law is written on our hearts. But which is why you always have this push towards an objective sense.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But it is one to think of, sort of a difference there between what the philosophy is and what actually comes out, because they do believe in something that's actually good and something that's actually evil.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is fun to think of.
And you can
What do you
see
guys? Yeah, go
that
on.
the equality thing is still kind of derived from that objective morality.
Yeah, the Lord in our hearts. Yeah,
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 exactly,
fun
that you
to
just
think of.
mentioned. Yeah.
What do you
Yeah.
think of remythologizing the world?
Yeah. Is that token?
That's what I wanted. So that's the final part of our discussion, which I just
Nice.
mentioned right now. Mythologizing the world. That's Tolkien, and like you mentioned, and it seems to be part of the narrative here as well. Because if you remythologize the world, if you infuse nature, and if you infuse what you see around you as being filled in with myths and legends, you might have a more a sense of love towards it than if you just view it purely materialistically. I guess that's part of it. So, what do you guys think of that idea in this film?
I think remythologizing the world in a Christian sense is a good idea, but in the context of this film, I think it would be difficult because
What do you
it's
mean?
not a Christian concept in the way Miyazaki puts it.
Yeah, but
I
I
would
guess
say
Tolkien
that
talks
there's
of
still some Christian values within that can be extrapolated.
yeah,
Well, I think they extrapolate those good ideas from Christianity. So, uh, yeah,
Yeah, I think that Miyazaki in general is not just so he's pulling from Japanese culture as a whole,
mhm.
um, which is kind of I don't want to accuse him of not being a practicing Buddhist or Shintoist, but generally speaking, Japan is not really practicing the religion so much as culturally
Yeah.
Shinto
yeah,
Buddhist.
yeah,
Which I mean is kind of the ideal of
Yeah.
Shintoism
yeah,
in
yeah,
general.
because yeah, it
Yeah,
also
where it's
seems
more of a just a vibe rather than
Yeah.
a practice.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and then I think that Miyazaki also just pulls from, I mean, most of his films are, well, not most of them. I haven't watched all of them, but a good portion
Working
of
on
them
it.
are based off of Western stories or
Tales of
books.
Earthsea. Tales of
And then,
Earthsea.
yeah.
Howl's
And
moving.
then, I mean, obviously, Miyazaki was also influenced by Western stories, similar to, like, Astro Boy was from Bambi and all that.
Really? Didn't know that.
no
I
idea.
mean, that's why anime started. Do I did explain anime?
Oh yeah, right.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. Bambi
I see what you're
influenced the birth of anime. So I mean, I think that because our cultures and the world is so connected now, it's nearly impossible to really separate or um say that there's not an influence from other media when you have access to that media. So I think
Yeah,
that maybe he did have some Christian influences without realizing it,
yeah,
or
he might have had,
that
because
there's
yeah,
just Christian influences within the culture already.
yeah. But I find the idea fascinating to re-mythologize the world, because I think that is necessary when you think of how materialistic most of society is, even back here as well. It's great to re-mythologize the world. It's great to think of the world as not just of nature as not just trees and rocks and just that, but that that there's life in them. That, like Tolkien mentioned, of angels and fairies moving around, that kind of stuff. So in that sense, I think there's quite a lot to be admired in the mythologizing aspect of Miyazaki's film, especially in Mononoke Hime. So yeah, it is. I find it fun, and I find it, well, yeah, I kind of like it, because it's the deer god who comes in the Shishigami. That is an image that will never move away from my mind, and I've never seen that. But the first time I saw it, I had no idea why, what, and
Are we
it
talking
looked,
about the deer?
Yeah, the
yeah,
Shishigami.
yeah.
The
It's
the
Nightcrawler form.
yeah.
That's something to behold. That's like It's like a galaxy inside of him. I don't know.
Yeah,
It twinkled and stuff.
So creative.
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
very creative. It was very creative, but kind of plagiaristic.
Oh yeah, because it drew from Native American stories. Is that
Well, he
right?
got that from another manga, which was inspired by Native American mythology.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Even so, props
Well,
to
I
him for
mean,
creating something like
let's
that.
not say that Miyazaki was ever completely original, considering that most of his stuff is from other
somewhere
things.
else. Yeah, from somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but
He
but
just
but
likes breathing life into stuff.
yeah, and he did because I don't think any.
It's
Yeah,
an interesting
maybe
language you
there
used
are
there, Janet.
cultures.
I
Hmm?
Yeah,
like the wording I used there. He breathed life into it.
I'm just saying,
yeah,
well, I mean, that's the thing with creators and stuff. I mean, I can say this because I don't know if you guys are much into the arts or writing stories or anything, but I want to write a novel. I have a web comic, and
You have a webcomic?
I I do.
I just I
Um,
think Solo Leveling's final 2 chapters are out for free, so I'm gonna read those on the webtoon. Mine was already finished, but it's also a lot longer. I think it's like said 20
oh,
chapters longer, something like that.
yeah.
The webtoon kind of finished a
So
little
you
early.
understand, right? That like creators.
But going back to Mononoke.
What?
Going
Oh
back
no,
to
I was just
Mononoke.
my point though was that like when you're a creator, when you're a writer or anything, you're bringing a world into existence. You're bringing people into existence, even
yeah,
though they don't
yeah.
actually exist.
True.
Yeah, it's that sub creating, right? The token. If you read on tokens on fairy stories,
Yeah,
it's the sub creator, the sub maker. So you literally
Hmm.
are creating something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and you
Yep.
are evoking belief in people as well. So that's great. That's yeah. Go on,
Oh,
you
I
Jeanette.
didn't really have anything else to say. I was just saying, like, well, I mean, re-mythologizing and everything. Is that? I mean, maybe we should do it. I think it's just important. Um, well, like my thing is that I grew up in a sheltered household, so I wasn't allowed to see any of like these Japanese things because, like, my dad just blanket statement thought that it was all bad, and all like
To be
hentai
fair, that
basically.
stigma was kind of everywhere.
And
I don't know if I would call
or
that sheltered.
e- well, either way, like very sheltered. And then I was like, um, and I would go behind my dad's back. Well, I mean, I guess I should say that my mom was super laid back. She didn't care. She would watch like horror movies and stuff and let us watch with her. Saw Final Destination when I was really little and it scarred me forever. Um, but as far as
See,
like
so you blame your mom for horror and your dad for not letting you watch it?
I ended up liking horror later in my life, but at the time I was terrified of it. But my dad, no, my dad didn't like horror at all, and I didn't like it either. It just so happened that I accidentally walked into the room, okay, when she was watching Final Destination. Um, but it's that like he wouldn't let me watch like read manga, even though I really wanted to. I wanted to buy a how to draw manga book from the bookstore, but he wouldn't give me money. Or I tried like the packets that you get, and then I wanted to get one from the book fair, but then he said I couldn't do that because it was demonic. Um, and he wouldn't let us watch like a bunch of TV shows either, like Pokemon. Very innocent stuff. I'm not talking about like he's not letting us watch horror. I'm saying like he won't let us watch Ben 10. So,
Ben 10 was awesome.
um,
Ben 10.
so like I grew up in that kind of environment, and now I'm like an English major, so I'm reading all this stuff that's like really graphic. And then obviously I got into anime, which is also really graphic, and then I got back into horror, which is also really graphic. Um, but then I started seeing
Anyone sense
like
the pattern? Anyone sense the pattern? Anyone? No one?
No.
no. But I was seeing like that this stuff isn't bad. I went behind my dad's back and I bought a manga. It was Maximum Ride. That was my first manga. And nothing bad was in it. And And then I just started like taking all these stories in and reading a lot of them and realizing that why was he saying that this is bad? Because it's actually not that bad. It's good. And like there are good stuff of it and then there's bad stuff of it. And I could differentiate between the two because my parents raised me right. But like the more you go into the rabbit hole, the more you like get good and bad. But I think the most important thing is to identify the good parts of something, the bad parts of something, and when something you shouldn't look at, and then there's stuff that you shouldn't just blanket statement be like, this is bad. Because that's the environment that I grew up in, where there wasn't any communication as to why or like why a story is good, why it's bad, or anything. It was just, I'm right, you're wrong. Go move on with your life. So I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't think
Exposure to. Oh yeah, go
I
on.
don't think I was sheltered at all, but I do think I wasn't explained a lot of the whys.
Mhm.
And I do see I do think children should be explained the whys a lot more often than they are.
Yeah, yeah.
But I don't think a lot of parents can, because I sympathize with them, because it's hard to really explain the whys. A lot of the times
Yeah, and also
it's hard to articulate.
The whys are hard to articulate, and sometimes the whys are too graphic.
Mhm.
Yeah, that
Well,
certainly is the case.
I think it
That
just depends
part of it.
on who's explaining. Or I mean, I'd like to think that in the future I would be a good mom to be able to explain stuff and to talk through things and to show like, oh, you know, why do you like this character or that kind of stuff. And even though my mom wasn't as strict with what we were watching and everything, and she'd let us watch anything that we wanted, me and my siblings would talk about stuff and talk about what made the story good, what we liked in the characters. And it's actually part of the reason why I went into English was because I enjoyed talking with my siblings so much, and specifically about Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. My brother got me into like analyzing it. So so like I was walking with him one day through a wash in Arizona, and then we were talking about Full Metal Alchemist and like what made the characters good and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, man, I really like I like analyzing things. I like talking about them. And I only ever did that with my siblings. My parents never explained anything to us or answered why. So we found them for ourselves. And my sister, she married a really good Christian man, and like they went through apologists and everything like that. And she learned a lot more about faith and everything. And that was also another reason why in like church and stuff, I was always lukewarm, or our parents didn't really teach us too much about like why we believe or the evidence for believing. They were just like, we're Christians. And so as we grew up and stuff, and as my sister was learning this stuff, she would tell me, and then I'm like, why didn't I ever learn this stuff? I had so many questions. Like I would ask like the typical things that atheists would ask, where they were like, oh, why do Genesis 1 and Genesis 2 conflict with each other? Or who did Cain marry? Like I had all these questions, and I would ask my mom, and she's like, I don't know, you should ask someone else. And I'm like, okay, thanks, Mom.
Yeah,
You should ask
yeah.
someone else. That's why there's books. But so Mononoke, how are we ending Mononoke?
Just to tie up on Jannette's here,
I think we have to
it's
end on
actually pretty common
mythology, right?
to be, just to tie up on Jannette's end. I think it's pretty common because I never had my parents never really mentioned any of that, and I was banned from watching most of cartoons. Well, no, not Pokemon, but yeah, most of them. And I never watched movies, none of them. So yeah,
Really?
yeah, until I was 15, I never watched any movie, in English or my native language stuff. It was a Pentecostal household, so so
Mm.
it's pretty strict, and my Ammi, my mother, and Amachi, my grandma, both of them were pretty strict on that. So yeah, I never got any reasons why, but I just went with the flow. And then later on, when I wanted to understand why, I thought I'd have to read up on it because there's no way these guys are going to mention. But yeah, I do sympathize with them because I don't think that they could articulate even if they wanted to. I mean, it's hard for them to articulate some of those stuff. So yeah, I kind of sympathize with them because parents find those things hard to. A lot of the things they've grown up believing, and so it's hard for them. And the other things, uh, as faith is certainly a work of the Holy Spirit inside of you. So while they certainly have faith, they might not necessarily have all the tools to explain that to others. So that is part of the reason why, yeah, they might feel a bit legalistic when all they're doing is trying to inculcate a religious belief inside of you. So, I mean, I see the points, but yeah, I guess I sympathize with parents, both of our parents, when I think of it, because yeah, at the end of the day, it might be hard for them to articulate a lot of the things that we find easier because they have access to a lot of good material which they didn't have back in those days.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So to tie up on remythologizing the world, I think all of us are in agreement that it's a pretty good thing, so long as it's well, it's not
It's done with
it's not done
discernment.
crazy.
And
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's done
yeah.
with discernment, which I guess is true for most of this. If you do it with discernment, I guess it's great if
Mhm.
you, because
Mhm.
it certainly is an amazing work of art. The Shishigami is always in my mind, and it's
Shishigami, not the Nightcrawler. The Nightcrawler only appears in nightmares.
uh-huh.
I don't like that. I don't like the Nightcrawler.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Kind of creepy.
Yeah, yeah, I love this one. Wow, what an amazing creative work of art. But yeah, all right. So it's been awesome chatting with you guys, you Jacob and you Jannette, and we've been on about for 2 hours discussing Mononoke Hime. Again, I'll still come back to the
Your
yeah,
visual's a
yeah,
little off, but your
yeah,
audio is
bloody
fine.
yeah. So I hold on to the belief that she's the hero because I love the monomyth. I think you think Ashtaka is the hero because you love the no hate guy, and
I think
you
I think there's a symbiosis between the two.
yeah, and we've got the symbiosis guy. So there we have it. We've got
Jacob
Hime, we've
is
got Ashtaka,
Ashtaka.
and we've got the symbiosis. All right, you guys, it's been awesome. It's been fun. Let me just and we'll probably do a bit of this again.
All right.
And if you like this video, hit the like button and don't forget to share and subscribe. And well, we'll be back with more anime talks in the future. Goodbye.